I got a lot of flack for criticizing this trade, obviously, and I'm not sure why. I understand the thing with cap, and you have to get rid of Kemba Walker's contract or not. But I don't think that Brad Stevens needed to include the first round pick in order to get back Moses Brown and Al Horford, who I'm guessing Brad Stevens thinks can contribute right away, but I'm not sure how much. It's definitely not going to be 2018 Al Horford. But what do you think about that trade? Like,
Play one
do
as I'm
you agree
playing
with that criticism?
microphone plugging game here, but
Right.
I 100% agree with you, Noah. It's not a terrible trade if Boston really, they did enable themselves to now re-sign Evan Fournier a little bit easier without paying as large of a tax bill. It also positions you if you want to. There are ways that you could figure out how to use your full non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which in turn makes the team better. That being said, number 16, that's almost a lotto pick. And I know we
Yeah.
romanticize first round picks, but number 16 is what it costs to get rid of someone who, if he's healthy, is better than Al Horford and can play at an all-star caliber level. And I know it's a big if with his knees, but like Al Horford is 35 years old, and now you have this glut of bigs. And it's not. I don't think this was a sign of how much they value Moses Brown. That was, I
I
think,
don't think
he had to
Moses
be included
Brown.
for salary purposes. Uh, I just don't understand like why they couldn't even get Kenrich Williams, or if you were going to give up number 16, there were ways that you could include Tristan Thompson's expiring contract then to save yourself even more money. And so that's really where I think they messed up. We have to see how this plays out. If this is one of those situations where they can't reboot Kemba's value in OKC like they reboot everyone else's value, maybe the report on his knees is worse than we know publicly. Maybe Al Horford is fantastic for Boston, but it's like at this rate, they have so many bigs. Robert Williams, Grant Williams. Are you going to play Al Horford at the 4 again, which is what we saw was a disaster in Philly? So I think Horford's fit on Boston is fine, but you still need to move another big or two for the rotation to make sense. And I'll throw it back to you, Noah, really quickly. They needed to get something else out of the deal if you want to give up the number 16 pick in my book. If it was Kendrick Williams, I actually would have been fine with it. But mostly, could you have found a way to move that Tristan Thompson contract? Because then I think that makes the structure of this deal look a lot better.
I think obviously Boston's biggest problem this year, injuries really hurt them. Their big man rotation was really confusing at best. But at the same time, you're correct. With the 16th pick, people are talking about Moses Brown as a good value. I like Moses Brown, but I don't think he's worth a first round pick. And he
He
might
moves
have
really
just been
slow too. Like
Yes, and he also might have his production might have just been a product of the being on a terrible team. No hate to Moses Brown, but it's like I'm thinking like, what if he had made that same trade? Like if you had made that same trade for Christian Wood, that would have been a higher. I feel like that would have been better, you know. And I think you could have made that same trade, the 16th pick Kemba Walker for Christian Wood, and throw in somebody else. I think that would have been way better than getting Al Horford, who's 35, I don't think is going to be the same valuable piece to Boston's offense and defense that he was a couple of years ago, and Moses Brown and whoever, you know, I really don't. And I honestly, I think Kemba Walker is better than NBA Twitter thinks he is. And
thank
yes,
you.
the injuries do have hurt him has hurt his production, but when healthy, he's still a top 15 point guard. And when he's healthy, can help Boston win games and or even do his best, as we saw a couple times this season. So I think people are overvaluing this trade and overvaluing Moses Brown and Al Horford and undervaluing Kemba Walker. Even at that contract, he's still only 32 years old, and we all know point guards have a way higher lifespan now in the NBA. So I don't know. I feel like that trade was a little questionable. I think you could have made that same trade, a first round pick, Kemba Walker for a better big in Christian Wood, a young big, somebody who could help you win, a big that they actually need, someone who's better offensively. And plus, the Boston has way more holes to fill than just this gluttonous cluster of bigs now that they have.
Well, one of those voids was they needed another ball handler, and now they need 2 more ball handlers because they just got rid.
Exactly. So
Uh, I think the thing, and I actually have a question for you really quickly after this, but I think the thing I'll push back is I don't think you get Christian Wood for that package. just one because of the Rockets' timeline. So you probably need a third team that would value Kemba. Is it Kemba's going to Dallas, Kristaps is going to Houston, and then Christian Wood's going to Boston? But I don't know why Houston would value Kristaps more than Christian Wood at this point. He was really good. You would have, if you wanted to make a deal like that, you probably need to include more equity. Now, to that point, I absolutely would have included more equity if it meant bringing back Christian Wood rather than Al Horford, because you're just looking at his partial, and I know people are looking at his 14.5 million partial guarantee for 2022, 2023 and saying, oh, they could waive that, they could stretch it, and then they're going to have cap space. No, 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 no. Don't leave $5 million in dead money on your books for 3 years. I think they're going to think along the same route and probably let him finish his deal. So I don't know that you could have gotten. I think you could have gotten more. I don't know if you could have gotten a much better player than Al Horford, but you certainly, if you were going to get Al Horford, shouldn't have been able to give up as much. And at that point, could you have gotten Kristaps and kept the number 16 pick? Was that Dallas can't be that high after seeing the way Kristaps moves now? It's like he's on like stilts with cement shoes. But I am, to what I was discussing before, Noah, as an outside perspective, would you give Marcus Smart an extension if you're Boston?
Well, as somebody who wants Tom Thibodeau and Marcus Smart to pair up, and I would love to see him in New York, I would not want Boston to give him an extension. But for Boston's necessity, they need to give him an extension because a lot of teams would probably be vying for him, and he will get probably more than the 17.2 on the open market that you were saying. If they want to execute a trade for him, if they don't think that he's going to bring as much value, well, at this point, he would be your primary ball handler besides, which is a bad thing, besides Jason Tatum. You would have to give him an extension, but also you have to understand if you aren't willing to give him that much, then you have to trade him and probably get. I don't know what you would get back for him. Who would take that trade? Um, Portland would love Marcus Smart, but I don't think that right now the most tradable player on their team would include probably a package of CJ, Derrick Jones Jr., and whatever. But I don't think they're giving that much up for Marcus Smart. You would have to trade him if you're not going to give him the extension. But I would. It would be in their best interest to give him that extension.
Yeah, I would love Marcus Smart in Portland too, and maybe I'm wrong. And I see that Sager Trika, I hope I'm not butchering that name too bad, is in the room as well, and he's a Portland guy, so maybe he would be able to push back against that. They would just be they're so tiny then. I know Marcus Smart can defend 1 through 4, but he is the type of player that they would need. And having him and then having Robert Covington, absolutely massive for the defense. Thank you as always, Noah, for listening
Of
and
course, of
speaking.
course.